Hello, my beautiful friends, my fellow space blobs, earth blobs, sparkly blobs, seekers, sensitive spirits. How are you all doing out there? As I sit down to this conversation and to explore the upcoming partial lunar eclipse in Taurus, we are really sitting here between two eclipses in the heart of eclipse season, and I've taken to calling this little moment every 6 months between the two eclipses the hallway between worlds. I feel like this is such a liminal space full of mystery, and I've been getting a lot of feedback and notes and messages from my patrons and from some other close people to me that have been exploring a lot of, anxiety, exhaustion, overwhelm, weird sleep, really intense dreams. So you may be experiencing any or all of those things as we move through this particular eclipse season. It's been really, really tender. There's a lot of energy moving through the world right now, a lot of emotional energy moving, and I know a lot of us are feeling those world events, feeling our own personal evolution. And the more that we can bring sight to that and kind of sit with that, the better. And just being honest that a lot of us are feeling a lot of tenderness and maybe aren't really clear on how to keep moving forward, living in the world the way that it is. Knowing that we're together in that is a balm for the soul and can help us to be brave in facing into a very complicated world. And I hope today, as we chat about this partial lunar eclipse in Taurus, and as we prepare to come into the last days of October and into this very sensitive time of year as it is already, as we move through this kind of Halloween, Samhain, All Souls time, that we can hold each other and find some courage and find some poetry in it all. Because whenever I think about why I keep coming back to these archetypes and to astrology and to these chats, it's because when we put our sight on something, we take the time to really look at the poetry of the way our universe and our solar system moves, the way that we interact with it. We begin to write and to imagine and to create and to step into a place with ourselves that gives us deep sight and the ability to also imagine and write the beautiful poetry of life. And bringing that awareness and new angles to the way we tell our story, I think, is so much a deep part of this eclipse season, and the deep compassion we have for ourselves and for the world and for this messy process that we are in is such a touch point of the whole thing. But let's talk about this beautiful partial lunar eclipse in Taurus and how we're going to work with it this time around. This partial lunar eclipse in Taurus holds such a beautiful place in the poetry and the fabric of the last couple of years, and how all of us have been changing at really deep and profound levels. We have the sun at 5 degrees of Scorpio. We'll have just entered into Scorpio season about 5 days before this. And we have the moon at 5 degrees of Taurus, lighting up that Taurus-Scorpio axis. And the north node of the moon was in Taurus and the south node of the moon was in Scorpio almost all of 2022 and the first half of 2023. And this is our final eclipse here with an acknowledgement to that energetic cycle. We won't be seeing an eclipse in Scorpio or Taurus for many years to come here. And this really is a moment of deep acknowledgement of what that 18-month cycle was for you. The wisdom you gained, as well as the elements that you no longer have to carry with you. I think with any chunk of time, if you look at 6 months or a year or 18 months or 5 years, you can always find that there is so much wisdom gained, skills gained, ways of seeing the world, ways of telling your story, ways of being present here, ways of shifting that are so beautiful and valuable. Super important to recognize those. It's so easy to forget that it took time to develop really simple but nourishing skills about how we talk to ourselves or how we move through a moment of tension or stress and how we treat ourselves in those moments. Those little bits of wisdom that we gather over time build slowly, and this is a chance to acknowledge that wisdom. So I highly recommend taking a moment to write those down. What you've gained since January 2022. how you've shifted, how you've become yourself more. But this is also a full moon, right? And also an eclipse. So there's a lot of energetics here about release, about letting go, about the relief of that exhale, of that ability to shed a skin and say, I don't need to carry this anymore. And this is also a chance to think about what you may have picked up and carried with you over that 18-month cycle, all the way up until this eclipse season, that you're allowed to release. I know for me, that 18-month cycle of all of 2022 and the first half of 2023 was extremely challenging. I immigrated, and that is something that takes a lot of slow, tiny progress forward. And within that, I developed a lot of like coping mechanisms, nothing, particularly destructive, but it's those little details in the way I was moving through my day that I needed to do at that time. And now I can release some of that. Now I can release some of those tensions and those fears and those worries and those doubts. I can give myself a little bit of space to maybe start to develop the next wave of creative vision. So this is really a beautiful place to give yourself some spaciousness to think about the last couple of years and the transformation that you moved through on that front. And that's one of my favorite things about this particular eclipse, the second eclipse. It really is a throwback to earlier work we've been doing. Whereas the first eclipse that we had, that solar eclipse in Libra, is kind of an acknowledgement that we are now in a new cycle with the North and South node, that we are working with that Aries Libra axis and some visionary energy that way. This eclipse is really allowing us to collect the wisdom from what we've just moved through and to utilize that in understanding what is next. The next element of this lunar eclipse that I want to bring up is just to take a moment with Taurus's energy and acknowledge it, because yes, Taurus is the sign of creativity, and a lot of times we'll think of the Empress and kind of the lavish ease of moving through life. And the North Node in Taurus particularly has a lot to do with remembering that life isn't always just about the painful, hard things and the growth in that way. It's about also the beautiful things, the things that we savor, the things that we love, and that this is an important and valid part of the human experience, and that it plays a role in the whole process. There's that reminder, of course. But I would also say Taurus is linked to something really deep and powerful that we forget about sometimes with this archetype, and that is the wild self. For me, Taurus is so connected to the cyclical nature. It's an earth sign, so it's about, the wild worlds, the way that plants grow, the way that animals and plants interact, the way that all these living beings and energies are always interchanging and conversing, and doing it in a way that is not represented in our consumer culture, in our technological culture that has so much to do with to-do lists and keeping ourselves organized and on top of it. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge that part of what this lunar eclipse in Taurus is going to be reminding us of is our wild self, is our wild intuition that really doesn't have much vested interest in the way that we control ourselves and control the world and try to make it all make sense. So just a reminder there as well that there's an element here of free-spiritedness as we move through this energetic time. The other aspect of this lunar eclipse is that there's a lot of energy communicating beyond just the sun and moon in Taurus and Scorpio this time around. We also have Mercury and Mars conjunct in Scorpio, not too far away from the sun here, and they are opposing Jupiter in Taurus, also not too far away from the moon. So we have a really strong elements here in both Taurus and Scorpio. We've got the Jupiter and moon over in Taurus, and we've got Sun, Mercury, and Mars in Scorpio. And they're having this conversation in these fixed, potent, powerful signs that want us to look at the questions of what we're creating and why does it matter. And for me, this is such an interesting conversation that really just ticks so many boxes for me. It gives me goosebumps. It just excites me so much. So Mars and Mercury in Scorpio, they're asking, how are you changing? And what must you start to really see in yourself? What do you need to just start to really own and accept and understand about yourself and your power? And how do you need to accept your changing self? Mercury is the storyteller, the messenger, helping us to put words and ideas to deep feeling. And Mars is about our sense of motivation and movement through the world. And it's not, in Scorpio, about the external motivators, getting the accolades, getting people to approve of us and allow us to exist. Mars in Scorpio is asking, what brings you to life? What really matters in a life that's constantly changing? So these are really powerful question askers. And opposing Jupiter here in Taurus, Jupiter comes back with the question, what are you longing to create? What are you longing to do in this world when you take off all the mundane pressures? I know we all have those. We have responsibilities, we have things we're thinking about. But as just a mental exercise, if I took all those pressures off, what do I long to create? And this conversation is really the core, I would say, of this lunar eclipse. So some of the questions that I think would be really fun to journal on, explore, just let mull around in your mind while you go for a walk or what have you. What needs to complete and release in order for new creativity to enter? Yeah. We almost always need to release something in order for the next wave of creativity to come in. And all we're asking here is, am I even allowed to consider that? And if not, if I'm feeling resistance, what is it? What's coming up there? And then secondly, questioning the external motivators that I just mentioned a few minutes ago and how exhausting they are. I'm losing my words here. Why do you feel that you need to keep doing certain things? Do you fear somebody's going to judge you? Do you feel you'll lose something if you change course? What are your greatest fears about being yourself in the world? What are your greatest fears about honoring what you really want to create? This is a question I could journal on pretty much every day of my life. I have so many fears about how I'm changing and what I want to create. And anybody who is alive has big fears about how they're changing and what they want to create. Also, some follow-up questions to that would be, what keeps you repeating the same patterns? And is it worth it to keep repeating those patterns? Is it feeling like it's worth it to you right now? And there's no right answers here. Like, you might say, well, yeah, there's a part of me that's like, yeah, it's definitely worth it. And another part of you that says, no, it's not worth it. I'm so over this. I want to move on. There's some real depth and intensity to this lunar eclipse for sure. And just a reminder that go at your own speed, take care of yourself. This is about you taking the place of your own storyteller, your own navigator, your own master and commander, and taking some time to sit with what you want to sustain and what you want to release and feeling through all of that. So I hope that some of these questions will be helpful in that exploration. And with this theme of stepping into deep storyteller, deep wild self, we're going to pull some cards and feel through any extra messages coming through. And I am needing this check-in because I always feel so prepared for eclipse seasons because I'm thinking about them and I'm feeling through them and I'm doing all of that introspection. But this has felt like such a personal and deep and powerful eclipse season so far. And I'll be really curious to feel how it feels when we kind of close that out with the Scorpio new moon in a couple of weeks. But I am feeling so many emotions. I have cried a lot and felt some of the most tender emotions I've felt my whole life. So am I the only one? I have a feeling not. I have a feeling there are many of us. Ace of Pentacles. This card, this energy has just been showing up so much recently. In all my different work on Patreon, here, another card wanted to come through, Four of Pentacles. Yes, yes. A fixed sign lunar eclipse, you bet. You bet there's going to be a Four of Pentacles. Let's pull one more to go through this conversation. And I think it's a really interesting card in the context of kind of this world that we're living in with its, and as you can see, the High Priestess wanted to come out. I welcome her and her vision. In the world as it is right now, I think each day brings its own difficult, unanswerable questions about the world, about our own individual growth, about maybe our communities, as well as the bigger questions. And it's so interesting to have something like the Ace of Pentacles showing up so strongly in the work right now, because for me, this is like hope springs eternal. The Ace of Pentacles always makes me think a new world is possible. A new opening is possible at any point. And I don't mean that in kind of a plasticky, sugar-coated way. It's this feeling that can happen like inside of yourself. Any moment we can tap into those little beautiful places of love and connection or creativity, and that hopefulness of vision is present here. I think with a lunar eclipse in Taurus like this, it's creative vision is strong and creative longing is strong. And those longings are the things that lead us forward to do courageous and loving things in our communities and in the world and our own lives. And honoring that creative longing is so beautiful. And I really think that's what Ace of Pentacles is about, is the beautiful divine hand of creative longing reaching out to offer us the next little step and love us in that. So it's always meant so much to me when that card comes out. Now it's met here with the Four of Pentacles, and I also have such a deep affection for this character, for this archetype, for this energy, because the Four of Pentacles, fours in tarot are all about this stopping point after we've just done a creative cycle, right? 1, 2, 3, we've created something, and now we have a rest point. And Four of Pentacles is often associated with blockage, with stopping, with holding back a little bit. But I think for me, this has always been an important stopping place in any cycle in life where we are moving forward, we are breaking through to something new and we don't know what's going to happen. There is this moment of sitting there with the parts of ourselves that say, I don't want change right now. I want to stay where I've been. That works for me. I am not interested in pushing past everything and running around. And it's a reminder that we are also sitting with the parts of ourselves that are scared of how we are changing. And one of the important things that I think in an eclipse season, in any sensitive point in our lives where we are going through change and it's happening whether we like it or not, is to care for the parts that are not sure and to be with them, because they are, once we've taken care of these parts of ourselves, they are also the parts that are the most eager to add to the story moving forward. And that with growth, openings like this Ace of Pentacles is showing, there will be moments of pullback, and that is natural and innate to this process. So just a reminder there. Now, finally, we have our dear friend, the High Priestess, who I haven't seen in a chat for a little while, I think. And that makes me really happy. It makes me think about Saturn and Pisces. It also makes me think about the Sun in Scorpio, though, and Mars and Mercury and all that watery wisdom that's also sitting here during this full moon, right? We are in Scorpio season. We are moving through a very spiritually connected moment of the year while we go through this lunar eclipse. And that means that the intuitive knowing, the sense of knowing beyond the pros and cons lists and the practical and the logical knowing is strong here. Spirit is strong here. Our sense of connectivity to the energetic world is strong here. And with that is a different way of seeing the way we're changing and moving. It's a reminder here that while the Ace of Pentacles and the Four of Pentacles might be looking at the more practical ways we're changing, the more practical ways we're dreaming differently, the High Priestess is a reminder that there's an energetic process going on behind the scenes that's quite potent, that's quite powerful, and we may not understand all the information coming in through this energetic wave that's moving through this eclipse season. And we don't need to. We don't need to rush to understand it all right now. The High Priestess reminds me of initiation. She sits here at the doorway of the temple, holding behind her this great mystery beyond the veil. And she's a figure that is both welcoming us into that next wave of knowledge, as well as saying, are you ready? And I often find when I'm working with High Priestess that the wisdom that comes through will take time to make sense, and is not in a rush to get to its final conclusion. So whatever's moving through on that front that you may not know what to do with yet, just take a breath. You don't need to do anything particular during this lunar eclipse other than maybe acknowledge that it's there, and to just give it a space to feel it and acknowledge it. That's it. So there's a lot. There's a lot to work with in everything I just said. Any one of those facets of this lunar eclipse could be plenty to work with. So take what serves you. Take what feels real to you. Take what feels nourishing to you. I am going to be doing a visualization and a walkthrough with lots of follow-up questions over on my Patreon for this lunar eclipse. We're going to be exploring the inner creator, the inner wild child, and what they're wanting to bring forward into our lives and envision into our lives. So it's going to be a really supportive, soothing, gentle visualization that you can watch at any point. I will be putting it out this week. You can also catch up on our entire Reclaiming Intuition series. The final session comes out on Friday the 27th of October, and then will be available to watch the whole series, all the worksheets, all the questions. It's a really beautiful series of practices if you have been feeling out of touch with your intuition, out of touch with how to know in your life. I really recommend checking that out. It's available to all my patrons who are in the paid tiers. So I'd love to see you there for that beautiful journey. I have loved creating it. It has made ripples in my own life just creating it. So that's been pretty powerful. You can also find me on Instagram and on my website, and I will leave all those links so you know where to get in touch with me. I hope you have a beautiful lunar eclipse. Take such good care, tender care of yourselves and your inner storytellers and your inner creators and your inner resistors. They all need the love right now. I'm feeling so many deep, intense feelings, and I'm sure many of you are too. So I love having you here so much, my beautiful friends, and I will see you here again for our next conversation. I appreciate you so much. Take good care.